Some passages in the Bible that really do kind of make you stop and scratch your head. Assuming, of course, you still have hair to scratch, unlike Ed. This is sort of scary stuff Jesus is describing. Today's gospel lesson gives us, I think, one of these lines that when the pastor says the gospel, the good news, you kind of wonder if that's really true. Jesus is describing wars, earthquakes, famine, persecution, betrayal by family, being hauled before kings, and even death. All of these things, all these ingredients of a disaster movie. And then he adds this remarkable promise at the end. Not a hair on your head will perish. This is the point where you might scratch your head and say, really? Is that true? Because anyone who's looked in the mirror in midlife knows that hair perishes faster than just about anything. The disciples certainly didn't go through life untouched by danger either. So how can this be true? This thing that Jesus says after all of those calamities. Most of the disciples that he spoke those words to died violent deaths. The early church faced persecutions of every kind. So, not a hair on their head, Jesus? Really? Even now, standing up for our faith as Christians in this world, today, can cause us to endure hostility, ridicule, even violence for our faith. Just ask the pastors, David Black, Michael Wolfe, Jorge Bautista, and Hannah Carson, clergy who have been brutally assaulted by ICE agents for peacefully protesting and praying for people. Or ask the church members of the more than 150 faith communities in our country who have received death threats, vandalism, harassment, arson, physical assaults, and bomb threats for supporting the rights of LGBTQ people. Regardless of your position on the political nature of these things, these acts of violence, these acts of horrible danger, putting people in place of danger, is against anything we believe. So what is Jesus saying here, really? When you study this a little deeper, Jesus is using more of an old proverb than a line to be taken literally. Common in his world was a language that allowed itself to be expressed kind of like many English sort of idioms. They're not to be taken literally, but they have a truth beneath them. And we often lose that sort of sensation in the translation over the generations and so forth. But Jesus is trying to say something very profound to them. And this line about hair on the head only happens here in the New Testament. But what he's saying here is that God will not lose you. No matter what happens, no matter what calamities shake the earth or trouble the heart, your life, from the point of baptism, your life is held eternally in the hands of God. Your soul is protected and cared for and will be secure throughout all of time in the hands of God, like the children's message. Jesus adds that line in the end, by your endurance, you gain your souls. We live in a world where security is increasingly a necessity. This past week, our church installed a new security system. We now have cameras that video record what's happening in 6 different locations mostly around the exterior perimeter and inside the front door. There's an app I now have on my phone among a few others in the church that can monitor these video feeds remotely. And I remember a time when I was a kid when the front doors of the church were just left open for anyone. And we say the times are changing, right? Sometimes progress is not good. But yet here we are. I have a security system on my house too. Many of you probably do as well. We have security systems to protect from identity theft. Online transactions, credit cards, you name it. We have security on our computers, facial recognition on our handheld devices. We carry insurance policies. We wear helmets when we're biking, airbags, seatbelts in our cars when we're driving, medicine and treatments that can prolong life or even restore, Ed, the hair on your head. I visited, I have an interfaith group that I meet with called Ballad, and I was there this past Friday, and we meet at a synagogue in Wyomissing. And as I pulled up into the parking lot this past Friday, there was a whole new security system being installed there that included boulders being planted into the ground around every weak spot on the perimeter walls, like doorways, to prevent a car from driving through the wall, or a truck, say. And out at the front door where you would enter, the main entrance off the parking lot, they're installing these, they must have been 12-inch columns of steel that would go up and create a barrier to prevent, again, someone from driving a pickup truck into the building. We are living under increasing levels of threat every day. And we require then layers and layers and layers of security, like blankets in the night of a cold night in bed. And thank God we have all this technology and all of these layers. We do well to protect ourselves and our loved ones and our communities of faith today. But beneath that desire for safety, I think lies something deeper that Jesus is getting to in this lesson today. And it's this longing to know, deep in our soul, that at the end of the day, we'll ultimately be okay. Because there's a lot of signs in our world that make us feel a little less than okay. But deep in our soul is a longing to trust in something bigger than ourselves that can protect us and remind us that we're going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Sometimes it just takes a friend to remind us through the worst of worst, with a hand on the shoulder, you're going to be okay. We're going to make it. And that's where I think it's important to be reminded that there's a kind of illusion that is created by security systems. A kind of an illusion where security sort of starts to creep in and allow us to assume that all the security measures we install somehow are enough. Or somehow protect even that deeper, soul-reaching question of, am I okay? Is it going to be okay? The truth is, no amount of security can change the fact that life is very fragile. Deep down we know that, which is why even though we put in layers and layers of security, much needed, but yet simultaneously remind ourselves that the illusion created by all of these layers of security still need to be checked by trust in something larger than ourselves. Because I cannot install a security system strong enough to really ensure that we're going to be okay. Life is fragile, and there's no amount of changing that. Empires crumble, nations crumble, institutions fall, bodies weaken over time, friendships get strained, finances shift. Our control over our inner security is always much thinner than we'd like to assume. That's why Jesus tells his disciples this lesson that not a hair on their head will perish. That's why Jesus even begins by telling the disciples, who in the moment are admiring this beautiful temple, he tells them massive stones, gold decorations. The picture of permanence is not so. And he reminds them, and he says, not one stone will be left on another, he says. Even as they are looking at this magnificent temple, he tells them one day it will be destroyed, it will fall. Even the most unshakable things in this world still can fall, because they're made by us. And yet, in the end, Jesus promises, you will not fall out of God's hand, though. That's the point he's making. When everything else in this world falls, you will not ever fall out of God's hand. So Jesus is not promising that nothing bad will happen. He's promising something better, something deeper, that nothing can separate you from the life that God has given you forever and ever. Not the hatred of the world, not the betrayal of friends, not the economic turmoil that keeps us awake at night, not the fear of getting older or the fear of being alone, not sickness, not sorrow, not even death. None of that can separate us from the life that God has intended and planned for permanence for all sake. But that does raise a question, I think, doesn't it? I mean, how well does this then sit with us, right? I mean, because we live each day with very real fears, more than the spiritual sort of deeper yearnings. We live with real worries of the temporalness sense of this world. The promise of eternal safety is wonderful, and it frees us. But we also want security in this world. Is this request beyond the scope of God's concerns? I think that's a fair question for this text today. Jesus does not dismiss our temporal needs. While exhorting us to hold fast to the spiritual, eternal promise, Jesus offers us something in this text that helps us to sustain in the midst of all the calamities we face in this world. He says, by your endurance, you will gain your souls. Jesus gives us this gift of endurance. Endurance is not just gritting our teeth and bearing it. It's not stoicism. It's not. It's trusting that there is a God bigger than us. Day after day, trusting that God has us in His hands so that we can endure one more day or one more year. It's remembering that our lives are rooted in the changing tides, not in the changing tides of this world, but in the unchanging love of Christ. It's believing that when everything else shakes, the cross of Christ stands firm in our lives, keeping us humble, keeping us devoted. The temple stones did fall in 70 AD, just a few years after Jesus spoke those words. Empires did crumble. The disciples did suffer. And yes, many of their hairs perished right along with them. But their souls did not. They endured through all of that. And they became martyrs that continued to share the gospel for generation and generation. And we are part of the legacy of what they died for. Their souls were never far from God. And neither will yours be. This means that we see all the measures then of our temporal security, the technology, the alarms, the cameras, the passwords, all of these as gifts of God to meet the needs in our temporal world today. But simultaneously, we do not allow them to create an illusion of truth for us. That deep down, our true security still must rely on the promise that God gives to us in eternal life. So then, therefore, we resist the temptation to allow the fear of this world around us to dampen our spirits or to diminish our call to serve or advocate for our neighbors. This is why St. Paul says today in Thessalonians, brothers and sisters, never grow weary of doing what is right. When we hear of a man who drives his pickup truck into a place of worship and the world trembles with fear, we do not allow that event to stop us from worshiping God. We carry on, even more boldly, holding steadfast to our faith in God. When we hear reports of Christians treated harshly or even brutally for defending or advocating on behalf of others, and the earth quakes, we do not cease in our defense or advocacy for others. We do so ever more boldly, holding fast then to our faith in God. We don't worry then that we must secure our own future with our own power, our true security and our true hope for the future rests in belonging to Christ forever. A steadfast faith then frees us still in this world where fear is everywhere, where fear lurks on every corner. Our steadfast faith still frees us to live boldly and lovingly for our neighbor, and frees us to endure without losing hope. By your endurance, you will gain your souls, he says. So, my friends, take heart then. Stay strong in your faith in the face of all these things happening in our world. Do not be afraid of the world's mockery or its pressure or its storms. For the one who counts every hair on your head, however many or few, also holds your life, your future, and your eternity. And in his hands, you will always be safe. Amen.